This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Audit Committee of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. If participating remotely, please ask that you please close other programs on your computer or phone. Silence your cell phone and mute your audio when not speaking. Conference organizer will monitor the program's chat function for public comment. Comments may also be emailed to HRBRRD.newyork.gov. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. This time, do we have the roll call? Mr. Leslie?
Committee Chairman Albert Hayes.
Here.
Board Chairman ex officio Committee Member Mark Finkel.
Here.
John Callahan.
Here.
Stephanie Rozicki.
Here.
On video feed, Committee Member Jeffrey Rosenthal.
Here.
Richard Byrd.
Here.
Robert Leslie, me. Chief Engineer Robert Fultan.
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Manicha.
Here.
And excused is the Area Administrator John Hodgkin and Committee Member Kenneth DeWitt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leslie. Now, I wonder if I could have a motion to adopt or revise the meeting agenda.
So moved.
And second,
I will.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. This time, I would like to have the approval of the May 12, 2020 Audit Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
The second. Dick, you second that?
I will second it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Committee business. We got some committee business. We have a presentation of independent audit for year ending June 30, 2020. Mr. Manicha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's with great pleasure that we get a chance to review with all of you the results of the independent audit for the year ended June 30th, 2020. Leading our discussion this morning will be Nora Galeros. Let me, with great pleasure, reintroduce her to all of you. She is the partner in charge of the government and not-for-profit group at the accounting firm Galeros Robinson. This is the second year that her firm has conducted our independent audit. She is prepared as part of any auditor's responsibilities. They report to those charged with governance of the organization. And I'm now going to turn the talking stick over to Nora, who's going to walk us through her report to all of you this morning.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone, and it's nice to see you again. We have provided our presentation materials to Tim, and I'm sure it has been shared with you. So if you turn to page 2, this basically summarizes what Tim had indicated early on, that we do have a responsibility to report or to communicate with those who are charged with governance for the audit that had been completed, and our report was dated September 30th, 2020. So if we turn to page 3 of the materials, this outlines the information provided to you. So pages 4 through 6 is the bullet points or the summary of those items that needed to be covered, okay? So the first set of information is just to reiterate that we are in fact on page 4, we are in fact, we were engaged by Hudson River Black River Regulating District to audit the financial statements for the year ended June 30 of 2020, and that we have to audit it based on 2 sets of standards. The first standards is the U.S. generally we have to perform our audit based on those 2 sets of standards. The first one is the U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, and the second set of information is what we call the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We have described these responsibilities and submitted it in our engagement letter, which was sent to Tim on April 28th of 2020. So it also, in that document, it also described the responsibilities of management, and that is to ensure that the financial statements are complete and that the information are accurate, and that the financial statements are really the responsibility of management, and our responsibility is to perform sufficient amount of work so that we would be able to render an opinion that the financial statements are not materially misstated. We have issued a report dated September 30th, as I said early on, and we have rendered a what we call unmodified opinion, which is an opinion stating that the financial statements are not materially misstated, and that the disclosures and other supplemental information as required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board were included in the report, and that as a result of the audit are not materially misstated. On page 4 still, accounting policies and practices, the scope of work that we do is also to look into the policies and practices that the regulating district had implemented in 2020, and we say that the financial statements or the notes and the accounting policies and practices have been consistent from the previous years. Now, the notes are included in the financial statements, Exhibit A, which we will go into in a lot more detail later, and that's pages 31 to 35, describing all the policies and practices that have been implemented and are related to the financial statements. So if we go to slide number 5, the first 2 paragraphs talk about certain standards that were supposed to be implemented, but GASB, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, had issued another statement postponing certain implementation of the standards applicable to regulating district. They're also outlined on page 36 of Exhibit A, the financial statements, indicating which standards are applicable 1 year later or 18 months later. Okay. We are also to let you know, same on page in slide number 5, whether or not there were significant or unusual transactions wherein there is lack of guidance in terms of its implementation, and we did not note any accounting policy that we consider controversial or there is lack of implementing guidelines. Management judgments and accounting estimates, there were estimates made by management, and for the most part this is really related to depreciation, which is an estimate and not an exact set of amounts. So that includes estimating the lives of the fixed assets of the regulating district, and we are informing you that the depreciation or the estimates had been consistent from year to year. On the bottom of page 5 of the presentation, talked about audit adjustments. There were adjustments that we proposed to management, and management had agreed and had recorded this audit adjustments. For the most part, these are related to accrual and prepayment, and these are what we call year-end adjustments to bring the box to a full accrual set of financial statements. These are included for a lot more details as an attachment to this presentation, and it's on page 7 to 13. On the next slide, page 6, the first paragraph talk about uncorrected misstatements. Because the proposed adjusting journal entries had been accepted and had been recorded by management, we are not aware of any uncorrected misstatements at the end of the fiscal year. We are also to let you know whether or not there were disagreement with management or if we've encountered any difficulty during the audit process. We have received full cooperation from Tim and his staff, and we were provided all of the information we have requested so that we would be able to complete the audit in a timely manner. We are not aware that the regulating district had consulted with another accountant on matters that were discussed or that were covered in the scope of our work. Now, in terms of the any material weaknesses that we have encountered, because the audit was performed in accordance with government auditing standards, we are to look into the internal control structure of the regulating district over financial reporting. We have not noted any material weaknesses that we consider to be reportable to management. We did, however, note one, we call it reportable condition, and it has something to do with the calculation of retirement benefits. There were 3 retirees during the year, and one of them had, we've noted an error, and we have discussed that with management immediately. At the end of our audit, we have obtained what we call management representation letter, and what it is also included in here as Exhibit B on pages 62 to 65 of this material. What it is a listing of our responsibilities and a listing of management's responsibilities, and also representation from the regulating district that all that we've asked for had been provided, and that there was utmost honesty, if you will, in our discussion, and that there was nothing that was left unreported or shared with us. So those are the items that had to be covered in our discussion. And if we can just go to the financial statement now, and that's page 15 of the materials, and we can just go over the highlights of the financial statements for the year ended June 30 of 2020. Okay, so next slide, please. Pages 17 through 18, or page 17, yes. This is our independent auditor's report. So there are 2 pages, okay? And again, it talked about the scope of our work. Management responsibility is really the second paragraph here, more important than our work, if you will. And it's followed by our auditor's responsibility. And again, talk about the 2 sets of standards that we had to work with, and the amount of work that we have to perform so that we be able to render an opinion. And again, our opinion on page 18 is unmodified, and that it says that the financial statements that follow this opinion are not materially misstated. Okay, so if we can just go to page page 27, please, of the financial statements. Okay. So we have presented 2 years. It's a comparative financial statements, and that is for the year ended June 30, 2020 and June 30 of 2019. So you might have noticed that 2019 SAS restated, okay? And that restatement is explained on note 3, and that's page 35. But just to summarize why the restatement, the 2019 was restated is because there was new valuation on the other than post-employment benefit obligation and the expense. And what that means is that the regulating district had engaged an actuarian or a company that does valuation, and that company had been used from previous years as well. And so it affected the beginning balance or the beginning net position because the liability had to be reevaluated, if you will. There were changes to the calculation of the OPEB or other post-employment benefits. The biggest one was the removal of what we call the surcharge for what we call health plan, Cadillac plan, or one of the best plans available to retirees. And it has a favorable impact. And if I can just bring your attention to the middle of the paragraph, and it says other post-employment benefits liability. It's 15 million, it's a huge number. In 2019 is 18,993,000, and I'll explain to you why it went down. But this valuation report had affected that number in the middle, $18 million, 18,993,000 and 954 in 2019, and in 2020 is 15,498,316. Because the liability increase in prior years and decrease in 2020, it had an impact on its net position. So if you look at your net position, which are the three sets of numbers in the bottom of page 27, as you can see, the unrestricted amount in 2019 was $13,479,018, and in 2020 it went down. It's $10,410,728. So again, huge impact. OPEB liability, pension liabilities, those two items had huge impact on the net position. So if we go to page 28 for please, the next financial statement. This is what we call the income statement, the consolidated statements of activities and changes in net position for both the Black River and the Hudson River. Again, the 2019 column is restated because it has impact on, let me bring your attention to the middle of the page again, and we have other post-employment benefits. As you can see, the expense for 2019 is $1.5 million, and in 2020 it has a negative number of $3.1 million. I'm going to go over why those numbers came about. So typically on a year, in 1 year, you would book an expense at a tune of over $1 million, which include the amount that you pay as you go, the one that you make, that you spend on a yearly on a cash basis. But there is also that component which is based on estimate by the evaluators, and it is added to the annual expense. So in 2019, that's $1.5 million. And in 2020, as you notice, it's a negative number, it's a favorable number. It is because GASB allows the regulating district or any employer that has 50 or less, if there are any adjustments to the assumptions, and if whether or not it's a favorable impact, meaning reducing the expense, or it increases the amount of expense on an annual basis, it gets reported in the year that the valuation was made. So in your case, because of the assumption and because the removal of the surcharge from Cadillac health plans, as well as the other factors included in the calculation of OPEB, resulted to a favorable amount of now $3.1 million. It gets reported in the year it was made, and that decreased the total expense of the regulating district by that amount. So that explains why in 2019 you have $8,971,084 of total operating expense, but in 2020 it's 4,395,758. That's the set of numbers in the middle of the page. So we did have a prior period adjustment. Just go to the bottom of page 28, the third amount from the bottom. There was a prior period adjustment, again, all related to OPEB and based off the valuation report that was issued in 2020. Okay. So the net assets or the net position at the end of the year 2019 was 10.5 million, and in 2020 it's 7,608,251. So basically that's the highlight of the 2020 operating year. The subsequent pages are what we call notes disclosure, and that begins on page 30, and it goes all the way to page 52. Again, these are disclosure that are required by Government Accounting Standards Board. And then the last from 62 to page 65, again, I've talked about the management representation letter that we had to obtain from management before the issuance of our report. So that concludes my presentation of the 2020 audit. And if there are any questions, please let me know.
Mr. Committee Chair, I would note that Mr. DeWitt joined just as that presentation commenced.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Galero. Does there anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, would you entertain a question from staff?
Yes.
So Nora, it's Sean Callahan, great presentation. And relative to the beneficial adjustment in our overall net position, which has gone from very, very negative to not quite as much negative as a result of that one-time adjustment allowed by GASB. My understanding is that that may be found money, quote unquote, for this year, but that does not recur. So it's not an indication that ongoing OPEB liability is going to decrease in any way. It's sort of a one-time reprieve, but that OPEB liability looms, as it does for many other government organizations, agencies, authorities these days, looms very large for us in the future.
That is correct. As I said, it's always, I'm looking at the average, it's always over $1 million every year that gets recorded into your books. And that's of course non-budgeted, and that continues to affect negatively your net position on an annual basis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Minicha, do you have anything else to report or anything?
No, I would just say that as members of the board or my colleagues reflect on anything related to the audit or the district's financial condition, I'm happy to discuss further at their convenience.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Ms. Galeros. And is there any other questions or anything? Or if not, I'd like to ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Are we ready to proceed without, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it's a electronic technology glitch. My screen all of a sudden has just gone to a single stripe and everything else is blacked out. And it happened when the audit presentation started, so I don't know how to correct that.
We can see you, Jeffrey.
Right,
I
we
know you
can
can
see and
see,
hear
but
you.
I've just got like a stripe of like little postage stamp size images. I had a whole screen and then it stopped.
Mr. Rosenthal, do you have a box at the top of your screen that allows you to click on view, view everyone who's talking, active cameras, hide everyone, anything like that at the top and middle of your screen?
That's settings. Show audio. I mean, go ahead. I just wanted to let, oh, wait a minute, hold on. No, it's not, it's okay. It's not getting any larger, but that's okay. I got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. I'd like to call the November meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
Board Chairman Mark Finkel,
Here.
Board Member Albert Hayes,
Here.
Executive Director John C. Callahan,
Here.
Compliance Officer Stephanie Rozicki,
Here.
First Vice Chair Jeffrey Rosenthal,
Here,
Second Vice Chair Kenneth DeWitt,
Here,
Board Member Richard Berg,
I'm here.
Robert Leslie here, Chief Engineer Robert S. Fulton,
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Minicha,
Here.
and excused is Area Administrator John Hodgson.
Thank you. I need a motion to adopt the meeting agenda. There's no need to revise.
so
Make
moved.
that motion.
I'll
I'll
second.
Second. Any
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no guests and we have nobody to make public comment. So the next is number 7, approval of the October 14th, 2020 regular board meeting minutes. Motion to
So
accept.
moved.
Mr. Berg,
Second.
I'll second.
Mr.
Did we get a
Rosenthal.
second?
Mr. Byrd, Mr. Rosenthal.
Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Next is the report of our executive director, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My largely succinct report appears on page 9. Just briefly note a couple of items that we continue to make excellent progress working with Interactive Media Consulting on implementing the online permit capability for 2021. I want to thank everybody, the entire team, Stephanie, of course, sitting across the table from me. But really, it has been truly a team effort. We feel very good about where we are. We are at the point now where we are adjusting the mail merge document so that the secret code goes in the right spot. So we're getting down to the details and looking forward to offering that very important customer service improvement for 2021 and working through whatever minor glitches do emerge, as they invariably will do. That's going to be a great step forward for this organization and a lot of people, not just during my tenure, but long before, providing the foundation for that excellent improvement. Very much appreciated. And also just continue to thank the staff, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for their adherence to our COVID-19 safety plan, certainly not without complications, additional restrictions, and we are very cautiously and with concern looking at the future here and ready to get to buckle down again if need be. But it's been a great team effort with everybody really cooperating to continue to provide these very important services to the people that we serve. So with that, I'd certainly welcome any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for the director? Thank you very much. Contracts and actions. A resolution to approve First Amendment to Contract D012019 with Atlantic Testing Laboratories Limited. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. my memorandum is on page 10. In November 2019, the board awarded the Stillwater Dam Geotechnical Investigation Project to Atlantic Testing Laboratories. That investigation is intended to provide subsurface information in support of seismic stability analyses, which Rizzo Engineering is completing and which is mandated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Following the execution of that contract with ATL, and during the past 12 months, ATL has developed and submitted a drilling plan to the district and to Rizzo, and we've submitted that to FERC. FERC conducted a review, and their initial comments on the drilling plan included the recommendations for technical changes, including the addition of 2 borings to the drilling plan. And as such, we had requested a scope of work for an amendment to the contract D01-2019, since the contract that was previously approved does not include those 2 additional borings. ATL has provided the scope of services and the fee proposal to complete the borings, and proposes to complete the work for an additional fee of $31,598. So the district staff recommends acceptance of ATL's proposal to complete 2 additional borings and seeks board authorization to amend the scope and fee of contract D01-2019, and authorization for the executive director to execute an amendment which increases the price of the contract by $31,598 to a not exceed amount of $115,682. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
When will
Now,
I do those additional borings? I'm sorry, Mr. Bird, could you repeat that? I'm sorry. Yeah, when will they be doing those additional borings? When? Well, they will be doing those additional work along with the boring plan itself. The boring plan is only just as resubmitted to FERC, just approved in the last week. And so we hope to be out there at Stillwater. If we don't get snow in the next month or so, we hope to get out there this year and finish those borings. If the weather turns too nasty, we might have to postpone it until next spring. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended contract to $115,682.
I will.
So move.
Second? Second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, a resolution to award the work to perform a fair market valuation on an annualized basis of the 56 feet of head out of a total of 71 feet of head provided by the regulating district by virtue of construction of the Conklinville Dam contract number C032020 to Walden Environmental Engineering, PLLC. That was a mouthful, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you've done the lion's share there. I'll be only twice as long as your reading of the headline there. But as the board is aware, we receive revenue annually from Brookfield Renewable Energy for use of the 56 feet of head at Conklinville Dam that we provide. Their predecessors had rights to the other 15 feet already. So there's a formula there that has represented a significant amount of revenue for us in the Hudson River area, currently about $1.3 million a year. Our agreement with Brookfield is expiring next summer as of the end of June. We need to execute a new agreement with them, and as such, public authorities law requires us to ensure that we are getting fair market value for that asset. We do suspect, and I think the chief engineer has done some work on this in the past, that we may currently in terms of fair market value for what we're providing and their ability to generate at the EJ West plant. We may be leaving some money on the table, and if that's the case, we're very eager to get that and a fair return for the people we serve. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we did competitively advertise an agreement that would value that asset for purposes of the new agreement. Posted that in the contract reporter and on our website, as well as sent it to the firms that we had found that would be capable of performing such work. Got 2 good proposals from 2 qualified firms and scored those proposals competitively from both a technical and pricing perspective, and with separate committees evaluating each. And the successful proposal is represented in the resolution you have before you. So with that, and entertaining any questions, we'd ask for the board's support in approving our ability to enter into an agreement with Walden Environmental Engineering for not to exceed price of $93,600. This is a case of having to spend a little money to make a little money. Again, the revenue we're talking about here is significant, and we want to make sure we are getting a fair market value for that asset for the people of the state of New York. So with that, I'd be open to any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Any questions on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept contract C03-2020, not to exceed $93,600. So
I'll make that motion.
Mr.
I'll
DeWitt?
second.
Second.
Mr. Rosenthal?
Second.
Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Rosenthal. Thanks, Albert.
Okay, no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Staff and committee reports, General Counsel, Mr. Leslie.
Oh, my report is on page 19. I'd note my participation in staff's effort to secure that valuation is 56 feet ahead. And other issues regarding the reservoir operating agreements at Conconville. I basically spent most of my month addressing the issues surrounding the November meeting, various encroachment appeal issues. Also spent some time with state archives to address record retention schedules for the district's payroll processing and retirement system. Take any questions that anybody may have, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet.
Any questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Leslie, and we'll move to Compliance Officer, Mr. Zicky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report can be found on page 20. The month of October was particularly busy in the world of compliance reporting. Our annual DEC diesel regulation, Green New York product reports were all due, completed and submitted on time. New this year in MWBE is the requirement of a 4-year growth plan. It determines a means for the district to promote and increase our MWBE participation, and it requires a list of strategy and tactics. That growth plan has been submitted, and it will begin next year, due in April, and every year thereafter in April as part of our reporting requirements. I conducted our quarterly compliance audit at SFO. And finally, on pages 21 through 23 are the contract status sheets for the board review. If you have any questions, if not, that completes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Minicha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've spent a fair amount of time already this morning talking about the district's finances in the audit committee, so I'll keep my report brief. You can find it on page 24. We are running a bit ahead of where we were through the first 4 months of last year. That's always a good, happy situation to report. We'll continue to monitor that, and we'll have a full 6 months worth of activity under our belt when the board meets again in January. The only other two things I would mention is that the district made timely and complete principal and interest payments to the Environmental Facilities Corporation based on the $789,343 it has previously borrowed from EFC for work on the reconstruction project at Conklinville. And we have talked many times throughout these past months about extending that agreement with EFC by 2 additional years. I'm happy to report that we executed all the legal documents that were required to do so. Many thanks to General Counsel Rob Leslie for his help in all of that, as well as Seth Bryant from Bryant Rubino, our bond counsel. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on any of these items or any other aspect of the district's finances.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief Engineer, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on page 45. October saw 64% of historic average rainfall for the Hudson River area, which was a little bit of an improvement. And but again, due to the long deficit that we ran since April on inflow, our inflow to Great Sacandaga Lake and Indian Lake was only 9% and 23% of historic average, respectively, for those reservoirs. And which actually at Conklinville, the 9% for the month actually represents, I think, the top 4 or 5 in terms of low inflows to have occurred since the creation of the reservoir. In the Black River area, we had about 71% of historic average precipitation, and inflow to Stillwater Reservoir about 42% of historic average. Back in October, Great Sacandaga Lake was just over 5 feet below our target, and we are now about 3.2 feet below our target elevation. And Stillwater was about 5.5 feet at its greatest offset from our target back in the middle of October, and we're now about 2.6 feet below our target elevation. So we're gaining a little bit, getting back to our target elevations, but then again, we're also in our drawdown season, so that's to be expected. Be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? The next report is we're not having an area administrator report, and I should note, and I should have at the beginning, our condolences go out to John Hodgins, who lost his brother this week, and our condolences from the board. Get that on record. Any other board member questions or comments? If not, we have a resolution for our next board meeting, which will be Tuesday, January 12th, here at SFO. No December meeting. Do I have a motion for that to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Rosenthal, I'd also note that that would be the date of our organizational meeting.
Yes, okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to adjourn?
Don't move.
Second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, everybody.
With